Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The bus jerks forward as it pulls out of the station, its tires groaning against the asphalt as we leave the city behind. I sink back into my seat, trying to ignore the gnawing unease in my gut. The seat beside me is occupied by my wife, Jessica, who's glued to her phone, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the screen. My friend, Mike, sits across the aisle, his gaze fixed out the window, though his eyes seem unfocused, like he's lost in thought. I lean my head against the cool glass of the window, trying to push away the exhaustion that's been building up for days. Work has been relentless, with late nights bleeding into early mornings, leaving me with little more than a few snatched hours of sleep. This trip, meant to be a weekend getaway, was Jessica's idea, a suggestion she made with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I glance at her now, feeling a pang of something I can't quite name, discomfort, suspicion, maybe even fear. I shake my head, pushing the thoughts away. It's just the fatigue, I tell myself. I'm reading too much into things. I close my eyes, letting the rhythm of the bus lull me into a fitful sleep. The bus rocks gently as it speeds along the highway, the low hum of the engine blending with the muted conversations around us. Jessica shifts beside me, but I don't open my eyes. I'm too tired, too drained to care about the conversation she's having with Mike, their voices low and hushed. The world fades away as I drift into darkness. When I wake, it's pitch black outside, the only light coming from the dim bulbs overhead and the occasional headlights of passing cars. I blink groggily, trying to orient myself, and it takes me a moment to realize that something is wrong. Jessica is no longer beside me. I sit up, scanning the dark interior of the bus. Most of the passengers are asleep, slumped against windows or nestled into the crooks of their seats. I squint through the dim light, and my heart skips a beat when I see her. She's sitting next to Mike now, their heads close together, their bodies covered by the thin blanket provided by the bus. I watch, frozen, as their movements under the blanket become unmistakable. My mind races, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing, but the truth is undeniable. I can see the faint outline of Jessica's hand moving beneath the fabric, and Mike's low, muffled groans. Anger, hurt, and a sickening sense of betrayal churn in my stomach, but I can't look away. I'm paralyzed, trapped in this waking nightmare. The woman I've loved for years, the woman I've shared my life with, is cheating on me, right here, right in front of me. I force myself to look away, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Every instinct screams at me to confront them, to demand answers, to lash out. But I do nothing. Instead, I stare out the window, my vision blurred by tears I refuse to shed. The pain is overwhelming, but with it comes a cold, hard resolve. If this is how she wants to play it, then fine. I'll play my part too. I sit in silence, waiting for them to finish, waiting for the right moment. I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a precipice, staring down into an abyss. But as the bus hurtles through the night, a plan begins to take shape in my mind. A plan to make sure Jessica never forgets this night, and the consequences of her betrayal. When she finally returns to her seat, she doesn't look at me. She just pulls the blanket up to her chin and closes her eyes, as if nothing has happened. Mike, too, shifts back to his own seat, his face turned away. It's as if they believe they've gotten away with it, as if they think I'm too asleep, too oblivious to have noticed. But I've noticed. And I won't forget. I lean back in my seat, the anger burning away any remaining exhaustion. My mind races with thoughts of revenge, of retribution, of the countless ways I could destroy her life like she's destroyed mine. I feel a sick thrill as the ideas come to me, one after another, each more vindictive than the last. But as the night drags on, my anger cools, leaving something darker, more calculating in its place. This isn't just about getting even. This is about making sure she regrets this for the rest of her life. About making sure she feels as broken as I do right now. The city lights begin to appear on the horizon, a stark contrast to the darkness that has settled over my heart. The bus slows as it approaches the terminal, and the other passengers begin to stir, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Jessica finally meets my eyes, offering a small, tired smile, as if nothing is wrong. It takes every ounce of self-control not to lash out, not to wipe that smug expression off her face. But I return the smile, forcing myself to keep my emotions in check. There's no rush. I have time. I'll bide my time and wait for the perfect moment to strike. As we step off the bus, the early morning air is crisp and cool, a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. Jessica links her arm through mine, and I let her, even though the touch makes my skin crawl. Mike walks beside us, quiet and subdued, his hands shoved into his pockets. We find a small cafe near the terminal and settle into a booth by the window. Jessica orders coffee for us, her voice light and cheerful, as if she hasn't just shattered my world. I nod along, pretending to listen, while my mind races with plans and possibilities. The coffee arrives, and I take a slow sip, letting the bitter liquid wake me up fully. I glance at Mike, who avoids my gaze, staring intently at his cup instead. Good. Let him squirm. Let him wonder if I know, if I'm going to confront him. But I won't. Not yet. Jessica chats about the plans for the weekend, about the places she wants to see, the things she wants to do. I nod along, my response is automatic, my mind elsewhere. This trip might have started as a simple getaway, but now it's something much more. It's the beginning of the end for her. For us. And by the time this weekend is over, Jessica will regret ever thinking she could betray me and get away with it. As the sun rises over the city, I lean back in my seat, a plan already forming in my mind. This is far from over. In fact, it's just the beginning. The cafe hums with the low murmur of early morning conversations, the clink of cutlery against porcelain plates, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries hangs in the air, mingling with the scent of damp pavement from the overnight rain. I sit across from Jessica, her voice a distant hum as she discusses the itinerary she's planned. Mike is beside her, his eyes still fixed on his cup, avoiding mine with a determination that only fuels my anger. Are you even listening, Adam? Jessica's voice breaks through my thoughts, snapping me back to the present. I look up, forcing a smile that I hope passes for genuine. Of course, I lie, though I haven't caught a word of what she's been saying. She frowns slightly but lets it go, turning her attention back to the map she's spread out on the table. She traces a route with her finger, pointing out various landmarks and attractions. I think we should start with the museum, then maybe walk around the old town square. What do you think, Mike? Mike glances up, his expression carefully neutral. Sounds good, he says, his voice flat. The tension between us is thick enough to cut with a knife, but Jessica seems oblivious, or maybe she's just pretending not to notice. Either way, it's infuriating. I clench my hands into fists under the table, nails digging into my palms as I fight to keep my composure. The door to the cafe swings open, and a gust of cool air blows in, followed by a tall man with a weathered face and salt and pepper hair. He's dressed in a worn leather jacket and jeans, a stark contrast to the neatly dressed patrons around us. He scans the room, his sharp blue eyes landing on our table. A flicker of recognition crosses his face, and he strides over, a grin spreading across his features. Well, if it isn't the honeymooners, he exclaims, his voice booming as he claps Mike on the back, causing him to nearly spill his coffee. Jessica laughs, though it sounds forced. Tom, we're not honeymooners, she says, smiling up at the man who's clearly an old friend of Mike's. We're just here for the weekend. Is that so? Tom raises an eyebrow, giving me a knowing look that sends a chill down my spine. Well, it's been ages since I've seen you, Mike. Didn't expect to find you here of all places. Mike forces a smile. Yeah, it's been a while, he agrees, his voice tight. Tom pulls up a chair from a nearby table and sits down without waiting for an invitation. He glances around the table, his gaze lingering on me for a moment before returning to Mike. "You two old friends?" he asks, jerking his thumb in my direction. "Something like that," Mike replies vaguely, his discomfort evident. I clear my throat, deciding to take control of the situation. "I'm Adam," I say, extending my hand. "Mike and I have known each other since college." Tom shakes my hand, his grip firm and calloused. "Tom Branson," he introduces himself. "I used to work with Mike back in the day." "Hell of a time that was, wasn't it, Mike?" "Yeah," Mike says again, his tone clipped. It's clear he's not enjoying this unexpected reunion. Tom doesn't seem to notice or care. He leans back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest as he surveys us. "So, what brings you to this neck of the woods? Business? Pleasure?" "A little bit of both," Jessica chimes in before I can answer. "We're just taking a break from the city, exploring a bit. Thought it'd be nice to get away for a few days." Tom nods, though his eyes flicker with something like suspicion. "That's nice," he says slowly. "But this isn't exactly the most touristy spot, you know. What made you pick this place?" I feel the tension ratchet up another notch, and I'm not sure if it's because of Tom's probing questions or the fact that Mike looks like he's ready to bolt at any second. Jessica hesitates, clearly caught off guard by the question. I see the gears turning in her head as she tries to come up with a plausible answer. "It was a last-minute decision," she says finally, her smile a little too bright. "We wanted to go somewhere off the beaten path, you know. Somewhere we could just relax and unwind." Tom nods slowly, but I can tell he's not entirely convinced. He turns his attention back to Mike, who's staring intently at the table, as if willing himself to disappear. "You still in the same line of work, Mike?" Tom asks casually, though there's an edge to his voice that sets my nerves on edge. Mike stiffens, his jaw tightening. "No," he says shortly. "I've moved on." There's a moment of uncomfortable silence, and I can't shake the feeling that there's something unspoken between them, something that goes deeper than just an old work friendship. Tom finally breaks the silence with a chuckle, though it sounds forced. "Well, it's good to see you, man," he says, standing up and pushing his chair back. "I won't keep you. Looks like you've got a full day ahead of you." Jessica smiles in relief, clearly eager to get on with her carefully planned itinerary. "It was nice meeting you, Tom," she says politely. "Likewise," Tom replies, but his gaze lingers on Mike for a moment longer before he turns to leave. "Take care of yourselves," he adds over his shoulder as he heads for the door. As soon as he's gone, the tension at the table eases slightly, though it doesn't disappear entirely. Mike finally looks up, his face pale and drawn. He glances at me, his eyes filled with something that looks almost like fear. "Who was that guy?" I ask, keeping my tone casual even as I feel the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Just an old coworker," Mike mutters, avoiding my gaze. "It's nothing." But it's not nothing. I can feel it in my gut. There's something going on here, something more than just Jessica's betrayal, and I'm determined to find out what it is. "Let's get going," Jessica says, standing up and gathering her things. "We've got a lot to see today." I nod, following her out of the cafe, but my mind is already racing ahead, trying to piece together the fragments of information I've gathered. Something is off, and I can't shake the feeling that this weekend is going to unravel more than just my marriage. As we step out into the cool morning air, I make a silent vow to myself. Whatever is going on, whatever secrets are being kept, I'm going to uncover them. And when I do, I'll make sure Jessica, Mike, and anyone else involved pays the price. The three of us walk in strained silence through the cobblestone streets, the early morning sun casting long shadows that seem to stretch out before us, leading us deeper into the unknown. The city is still waking up, the shops just beginning to open, the locals going about their routines. But I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched, that someone is keeping tabs on us. Jessica chats lightly, pointing out various landmarks and attractions as if nothing is wrong, as if everything is perfectly normal. But I know better. I can feel the tension radiating off her in waves, the forced cheerfulness in her voice as she tries to keep up the charade. Mike walks beside her, his shoulders hunched, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He hasn't said a word since we left the cafe, and I can tell he's on edge, his eyes darting around as if expecting something, or someone, to jump out at any moment. We reach the entrance to the museum, and Jessica pauses, glancing at us with a bright smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "This should be fun, right?" she says, her voice a little too high-pitched. I nod, though my mind is elsewhere, still replaying the encounter with Tom in the cafe. There's something there, something I'm missing, and I need to figure out what it is before it's too late. As we step into the cool, dimly lit museum, I make a mental note to keep a close eye on both Jessica and Mike. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, I'll make sure they regret ever crossing me. The day drags on, with Jessica leading us from one exhibit to the next, her enthusiasm almost painful to watch. Mike remains silent, his eyes distant, his mind clearly elsewhere. I keep my distance, observing them both, waiting for something, anything, that will give me a clue as to what's really going on. Finally, we reach the last exhibit, and Jessica suggests we grab some lunch. Mike agrees with a terse nod, and I follow them out of the museum, my mind still racing with possibilities. We find a small bistro tucked away on a side street, the kind of place that's easy to overlook if you're not paying attention. We settle into a corner booth, and Jessica orders a bottle of wine for the table, her voice a little too bright, a little too eager. As we wait for our food, the conversation drifts to safer, more mundane topics, the weather, work, the latest movies. But I'm only half listening, my mind still turning over the events of the morning. When the food arrives, I pick at my plate, my appetite long gone. Jessica chatters on, oblivious to the tension between Mike and me. I watch them both carefully, looking for any signs of collusion, any hint of what they might be hiding. As the meal drags on, I find myself growing increasingly frustrated. Whatever secrets they're keeping, they're doing a good job of hiding them. But I won't be deterred. I've come too far to back down now. After lunch, we head back to the hotel, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the streets. Jessica suggests we take a nap before heading out for the evening, and I agree, though I have no intention of sleeping. As soon as we're in our room, Jessica flops down on the bed, letting out a sigh of contentment. "This has been nice, hasn't it?" she says, her voice soft. I nod, though I don't respond. Instead, I watch her closely, waiting for some sign of guilt, some crack in her facade. But she just closes her eyes, a small smile playing on her lips. I wait until I'm sure she's asleep before I slip out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I need to clear my head, to figure out my next move. I head down to the lobby, my mind racing with possibilities. As I step out onto the street, the cool breeze helps clear the fog in my mind. I start walking, not sure where I'm going, but knowing I need to keep moving, to keep thinking. I don't know what the rest of this weekend will bring, but I do know one thing: I'm not going to let Jessica or Mike, or anyone else, get away with what they've done. I'm going to make them pay, one way or another. The city has a strange way of wrapping itself around you, pulling you into its labyrinth of streets, alleys, and hidden corners. I find myself wandering aimlessly, each step taking me further from the hotel and deeper into my thoughts. The weight of Jessica's betrayal presses heavily on my chest, but underneath that pain is a growing determination. I know I can't confront them directly, not yet. I need more information, more ammunition. I need to make sure my revenge is as calculated and devastating as possible. As I turn a corner, I nearly bump into a group of tourists, their laughter and conversation grating against my already frayed nerves. I step back, allowing them to pass, and as I do, I catch sight of a familiar face across the street. It's Tom, the man from the cafe, leaning casually against the wall of a building, smoking a cigarette. He spots me too, his eyes narrowing slightly as he flicks the cigarette to the ground and crushes it under his boot. For a moment, we just stare at each other, the sounds of the city fading into the background. Then, as if making a decision, Tom pushes off the wall and crosses the street toward me. I brace myself, unsure of what to expect, but I force myself to stay calm, to keep my emotions in check. "Fancy seeing you again," Tom says with a smirk, his voice low and gravelly. He gestures to the street behind me. "Out for a stroll?" I nod, though my mind is racing, trying to read between the lines of his casual demeanor. "Just needed some air," I reply, keeping my tone neutral. Tom chuckles, but there's no warmth in it. "Yeah, I bet you did." He pauses, looking me up and down, his eyes sharp and calculating. "You've got the look of a man with a lot on his mind." I shrug, trying to appear indifferent, though I know he sees right through me. "Don't we all?" "Sure," he agrees, but there's an edge to his voice that sets my nerves on edge. He leans in slightly, lowering his voice. "But not everyone's dealing with the kind of shit you're dealing with." My heart skips a beat, and I force myself to keep my expression neutral. "What do you mean?" Tom grins, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "Come on, Adam. You're a smart guy. You must have figured out by now that something's off." I say nothing, waiting for him to continue, my mind whirling with possibilities. He glances around, as if making sure no one is listening, before speaking again. "Look, I don't know all the details, but I know enough to see that you're caught up in something way over your head. And if you're not careful, it's going to swallow you whole." I stiffen, a cold dread creeping up my spine. "What are you talking about?" Tom sighs, running a hand through his hair. "I'm talking about Mike and Jessica. They're not who you think they are." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I feel the blood drain from my face. "What do you know?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "More than I probably should," he admits, his tone grim. "I don't have all the pieces, but I know they're playing a dangerous game, and you're caught in the middle of it." I swallow hard, trying to process what he's saying. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've been where you are," he says simply. "I know what it's like to be blindsided, to have your life turned upside down. And I know what it's like to want revenge." His words resonate with me, and for a moment, the anger and betrayal give way to something else: fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of what I might discover if I keep digging. But I push it aside, focusing on the task at hand. "What do you suggest I do?" I ask, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Tom studies me for a moment, as if weighing his options. Then he nods, as if coming to a decision. "Meet me tonight, around 9. There's a bar a few blocks from here, the Rusty Nail. It's a dive, but it's quiet. We can talk more there." I hesitate, knowing this could be a trap, but I also know I don't have much choice. If I want answers, I'll have to take the risk. "I'll be there," I say finally. Tom nods again, satisfied. "Good. And Adam, watch your back." With that, he turns and walks away, disappearing into the crowd before I can ask any more questions. I stand there for a moment, processing what just happened, before turning back toward the hotel. My mind is buzzing with questions, each one more unsettling than the last. When I return to the hotel, Jessica is still asleep, her face peaceful and serene. I feel a surge of anger at the sight, but I push it down, forcing myself to stay calm. I need to play my part, to keep up the charade until I can get the answers I need. I sit down in the armchair by the window, staring out at the city as the minutes tick by. The sun is beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the rooftops, but I barely notice. My mind is elsewhere, replaying the conversation with Tom over and over in my head. By the time Jessica wakes up, the room is bathed in the soft light of early evening. She stretches and yawns, looking over at me with a sleepy smile. "You didn't wake me," she says, her voice still thick with sleep. "You looked like you needed it," I reply, forcing a smile. She smiles back, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. "Thanks," she says, standing up and heading to the bathroom to freshen up. I watch her go, my mind churning with plans and possibilities. I know I need to keep up appearances, to act as if nothing is wrong, but it's getting harder and harder to keep the mask in place. When she comes out of the bathroom, she's dressed and ready to go, her earlier weariness replaced by a bright, almost manic energy. "Let's go out," she says, her eyes shining with excitement. "We can have dinner and maybe check out some of the bars around here." I nod, standing up and grabbing my jacket. "Sure," I say, keeping my tone light. "That sounds good." She smiles, looping her arm through mine as we head out the door. I can feel the warmth of her skin against mine, but it feels foreign, like touching a stranger. As we step out into the cool evening air, I glance at my watch. It's almost 8, giving me just enough time to get through dinner before my meeting with Tom. I make a mental note of the time, knowing I need to keep Jessica distracted until then. We find a small restaurant a few blocks from the hotel, the kind of place that's cozy and intimate, with dim lighting and soft music playing in the background. Jessica orders a bottle of wine, her voice bright and cheerful as she chats with the waiter. I nod along, my response is automatic, my mind elsewhere. As the meal progresses, I find myself watching her more closely, looking for any signs of guilt, any hints that she knows I'm onto her. But she's good, too good. She laughs and jokes, her smile never wavering, her eyes never betraying the secrets she's keeping. By the time we finish dinner, it's almost 9, and I can feel the tension building inside me. I know I need to get to the Rusty Nail, but I can't just leave Jessica here without an excuse. I need to make a quick call, I say, standing up and pulling out my phone. "I'll be right back." She looks up at me, her smile faltering slightly, but she nods. "Okay," she says, her voice soft. "I'll wait here." I step outside, my heart pounding in my chest as I make my way down the street. The air is cool and crisp, the city alive with the sounds of nightlife. I walk quickly, my mind racing with questions and doubts, but I push them aside, focusing on the task at hand. When I reach the Rusty Nail, I pause outside, taking a deep breath before pushing open the door. The bar is dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke. A few patrons are scattered around the room, nursing their drinks in silence, but I barely notice them. My eyes are fixed on the figure sitting at the bar, his back to me. Tom turns as I approach, his expression unreadable. "You made it," he says, gesturing to the stool next to him. I sit down, my mind buzzing with questions, but I force myself to stay calm, to play it cool. "What's this all about, Tom?" I ask, my voice low. He glances around, making sure no one is listening, before leaning in closer. "I don't have all the answers, but I know enough to tell you that you're in deep shit, Adam. And if you're not careful, it's going to get a lot worse." I feel a chill run down my spine, but I force myself to stay composed. "What do you know?" Tom takes a deep breath, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I know that Mike and Jessica are up to something. I don't know all the details, but I've seen enough to know that they're not just having an affair. There's something bigger going on, something dangerous." My mind races, trying to make sense of his words. "What do you mean?" Tom sighs, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not sure, but I've seen them meeting with people, shady people. And it's not just once or twice. They're in deep, Adam. And if you're not careful, you're going to get dragged down with them." I feel a surge of anger and fear, but I force myself to stay calm. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've been where you are," he says simply. "I know what it's like to be blindsided, to have your life turned upside down. And I know what it's like to want revenge. His words resonate with me, and for a moment, the anger and betrayal give way to something else, fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of what I might discover if I keep digging. But I push it aside, focusing on the task at hand. What do you suggest I do? I ask, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Tom studies me for a moment, as if weighing his options. Then he nods, as if coming to a decision. Get out, he says simply. Walk away before it's too late. I feel a pang of frustration at his words, but I know he's right. I can't just walk away, I say, my voice tight. I need answers. Tom nods slowly, as if he understands. I get it. But just be careful, Adam. This isn't a game. Whatever they're involved in, it's dangerous. And if you're not careful, you're going to get caught in the crossfire. I nod, my mind racing with possibilities. Thanks, Tom, I say, my voice sincere. I appreciate it. He nods, his expression serious. Just watch your back, he says quietly. And if you need help, you know where to find me. With that, he stands up, tossing a few bills on the bar before turning to leave. I watch him go, my mind buzzing with questions and doubts, but I know I need to stay focused. I have to get to the bottom of this, to uncover the truth, no matter how dark it might be. As I step out of the bar and back into the cool night air, I feel a sense of determination settle over me. I know what I have to do, and I won't stop until I've gotten the answers I need. The shadows may be deepening, but I'm not afraid. I'm ready for whatever comes next. The cold night air bites at my face as I make my way back to the hotel, the weight of Tom's words heavy on my mind. The city around me feels like a living entity, its pulse quickening with each step I take, as if it knows the climax of this twisted tale is near. The shadows seem to stretch longer, the streetlights flicker with a ghostly glow, and the distant hum of traffic fades into the background, leaving me alone with my thoughts. When I reach the hotel, I take a deep breath before pushing through the revolving doors. The lobby is quiet, the front desk clerk nodding off behind the counter, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I step into the elevator, the walls closing in around me as I ascend to our floor. My heart pounds in my chest, the anticipation and dread mingling into a nauseating mix. The hallway outside our room is dimly lit, the silence almost oppressive. I hesitate for a moment, my hand hovering over the door handle, before I finally turn it and step inside. Jessica is sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me, staring out the window at the city lights below. She doesn't turn around when I enter, and for a moment, I wonder if she's even aware of my presence. "Where did you go?" she asks softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I close the door behind me, leaning against it as I search for the right words. "I needed to clear my head," I say finally, my voice thick with the weight of unspoken truths. She nods, still not looking at me. The silence stretches between us, thick and suffocating, until I can't take it anymore. "Jessica, we need to talk," I say, my voice firmer now. She turns then, her eyes locking onto mine, and for the first time, I see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. There's fear there, and something else, guilt. "What's going on?" I press, taking a step toward her. "What are you and Mike involved in?" Her eyes widen slightly, and she opens her mouth to speak, but no words come out. I can see the panic rising in her, the realization that the game is up. "Tell me the truth," I demand, my voice hardening. "No more lies." She looks away, her hands twisting in her lap, and I feel the anger bubbling up inside me. I take another step closer, my patience wearing thin. "Jessica," I say, my voice low and dangerous. "Tell me." She flinches at the tone, her shoulders hunching as if trying to protect herself from the impact of my words. Then, with a shaky breath, she finally looks up at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I never wanted this, Adam, she says, her voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I force myself to stay calm, to stay focused. What did you want then? I ask, my voice cold. She shakes her head, tears spilling over and running down her cheeks. It started as just a stupid fling, she admits, her voice barely above a whisper. I was lonely, you were always working, and Mike, he was there. It was just supposed to be a distraction, something to fill the emptiness. I feel a surge of disgust at her words, but I bite it back, knowing there's more to this story. And then what happened? I ask, my voice tight. She hesitates, her eyes darting to the door as if she's considering making a run for it. But then she seems to resign herself to the inevitable and lets out a shuddering breath. Mike got involved with some people, she says, her voice barely audible. Bad people. They offered him money, more money than we'd ever seen, for some kind of deal. He needed me to help him, to play along, to make it look legit. I stare at her, my mind struggling to process what she's saying. What kind of deal? I demand, my voice rising with anger. She shakes her head again, her hands trembling as she tries to wipe away the tears. I don't know all the details, she admits. But it was something big, something dangerous. And once we were in, there was no way out. I take a step back, feeling as if the ground is crumbling beneath my feet. So, you used me? I ask, my voice raw with betrayal. You used me as a cover for your affair and whatever illegal shit you're involved in? She looks up at me then, her eyes filled with anguish. I'm sorry, Adam, she says, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to get out. I didn't want to drag you into this. But it's too late. I'm already in too deep, and the realization sends a wave of cold fury through me. And what about now? I ask, my voice like ice. Are you still planning to use me? She hesitates for a moment, and I can see the internal struggle playing out on her face. But then she nods, the tears falling freely now. Yes, she whispers, her voice filled with self-loathing. I didn't know what else to do. I'm so sorry. I feel a surge of rage like I've never felt before, and for a moment, I'm tempted to lash out, to throw something, to scream at her for everything she's done. But I force myself to stay calm, to keep my emotions in check. There will be time for that later. Right now, I need answers. What's the plan? I ask, my voice cold and detached. She swallows hard, looking away from me as she speaks. Mike was supposed to meet with the buyer tonight, she says, her voice trembling. He was going to hand over the documents, and then we were going to disappear. We were going to leave the country, start over somewhere else. The words send a jolt of shock through me, and I feel my heart start to race. What documents? I demand, my mind racing with possibilities. She hesitates again, but then she seems to realize that there's no point in hiding anything anymore. Financial records, she admits. From your company. Mike got access to them through me, and he was going to sell them to the highest bidder. The betrayal hits me like a physical blow, and I feel the room spin around me. I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the fury inside me is like a wildfire, threatening to consume everything in its path. So, you were going to ruin my life, I say, my voice low and dangerous. And then just disappear, leaving me to pick up the pieces? She nods, her face crumpling as she begins to sob. I'm so sorry, she whispers, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to fix it. But her tears mean nothing to me now. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I loved, is gone, replaced by this stranger who has betrayed me in the worst possible way. Where's Mike now? I ask, my voice cold and emotionless. She hesitates, but then she sighs, as if resigned to her fate. He's at the warehouse by the docks, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. That's where the deal is going down. I turn and walk out of the room, the anger boiling inside me with every step. I can't stay here, I can't even look at her right now. My footsteps echo down the silent hallway as I make my way back to the elevator. My mind is racing with a mix of fury and fear. Mike has not only betrayed our friendship, but he's dragged me into something dangerous, something that could destroy everything I've worked for. As I exit the hotel, I hail a cab and give the driver the address of the docks. The ride is a blur of passing lights and the sound of the driver's radio, but I barely notice. My mind is fixated on what lies ahead, on the confrontation that's about to happen. When the cab pulls up near the warehouse, I step out into the cold night air, my heart pounding in my chest. The docks are eerily quiet, the only sound the distant lapping of water against the pier. I make my way to the warehouse, the weight of what I'm about to do pressing heavily on my shoulders. The warehouse looms ahead, its windows dark and foreboding. I take a deep breath, steeling myself before pushing open the door. The inside is dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of dust and oil. I can hear voices coming from somewhere deeper within, and I follow them, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. As I round a corner, I see them, Mike and a man I don't recognize, standing by a table covered in documents. They're deep in conversation, their voices low and tense. I step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Mike," I say, my voice echoing off the walls. He turns to me, his eyes widening in shock. "Adam," he says, his voice filled with a mix of surprise and fear. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I reply, my voice cold. "But I think I already know." The man beside him, who I assume is the buyer, looks between us, his expression unreadable. "Is there a problem?" he asks, his voice calm but with an undercurrent of danger. "There's no problem," Mike says quickly, his eyes darting to me. "Adam, you shouldn't be here." I step closer, my anger boiling over. "You're right, I shouldn't be," I say, my voice low and dangerous. "But I am. And I'm not leaving until we settle this." Mike swallows hard, his face pale. "Look, I didn't want it to be like this," he says, his voice shaky. "But I needed the money. We both did. And you thought stealing from me was the answer?" I ask, my voice rising with anger. He shakes his head, his eyes pleading. "It wasn't like that. It was just supposed to be a quick deal, in and out. But it got complicated." "Complicated?" I echo, my voice filled with disbelief. "You're selling out your best friend, Mike. There's nothing complicated about that." He looks away, unable to meet my eyes. The buyer watches us, his expression impassive, as if this is just another business transaction to him. "Adam, please," Mike says, his voice desperate. "We can still fix this. We can walk away right now. Just let it go." "But I can't let it go. Not after everything he's done. Not after what Jessica told me." "You've already made your choice," I say, my voice cold and final. "And now you have to live with it." Mike's face crumples, and I can see the fear in his eyes, the realization that he's lost everything. The buyer steps forward, his eyes cold and calculating. "Is this going to be a problem?" he asks, his voice calm but laced with menace. "No," I say, my voice steady. "There's no problem. We're done here." I turn and walk away, the weight of what I've just done pressing down on me. I can hear Mike calling after me, his voice filled with desperation, but I don't stop. I keep walking, my footsteps echoing in the empty warehouse. When I step outside, the cold night air hits me like a slap in the face. I take a deep breath, the realization of what just happened sinking in. I've lost everything, my wife, my best friend, my trust in the people I thought I knew. But in a strange way, I also feel a sense of relief. The deception is over. The truth is out. As I walk away from the warehouse, I know that this is the end. There's no going back to the way things were. The people I once loved and trusted are gone, replaced by strangers who betrayed me in the worst possible way. But as I walk away, I also know that I'm not alone. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt, they're all still with me, but they're no longer weighing me down. I'm free now, free to move on, free to rebuild my life. As I disappear into the night, leaving behind the ruins of my old life, I make a silent vow to myself. I'll never let anyone deceive me like this again. I'll never let anyone betray me like this again. And I'll never forget what they did to me. And with that, I walk away, the darkness closing in around me, knowing that I'll never see them again. The shadows have deepened, the lies have been exposed, and the game is over. It's time to start a new chapter, and this time, I'm writing my own story.